Good evening. Or as they say at Agape International Spiritual Center, good morning. Because every moment is a brand new moment. Every moment is an opportunity to start afresh and to start anew. So I am Reverend Jeffrey Kealoha Ryan, and it is my distinct honor to serve this beloved community, Riverside Community Center for Spiritual Living. And it is also my privilege and my pleasure to welcome all of you into our home. So thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for the sacred yes and the call on your heart that has brought you here in this moment at this time. So we are a social media friendly community. So we encourage you to post, to check in and post on Facebook and Instagram and to tweet throughout the evening as you see fit. But we do ask that you please silence your cell phones so that we're not disturbed this evening. We do invite you to use the hashtags as you're on social media. We do invite you to use the hashtags Families Belong Together, hashtag Families Belong Together, and hashtag Love Lives Here, as well as hashtag Migration is Sacred. Hashtag Migration is Sacred. That's another one of the national campaigns that we are using. So all three of those would be wonderful if you use those hashtags for us. So keep that in mind as we go throughout this evening. Tonight's vigil is being live streamed on Facebook Live, and we are also recording it to put it up on YouTube tomorrow. So if you are uncomfortable being on camera, then I suggest you part the seas and sit on the sides of the sanctuary or toward the back of the sanctuary where you will not be captured on camera. Simultaneous Spanish language interpretation is available by Lupe Aguilera. She's sitting there in the back. So if that is something that you would be interested in, that you would like to have to help you through this evening, she has little headsets that you can wear that you can listen to. That way you can listen to the simultaneous interpretation that's happening. So thank you to Lupe Aguilera. And we also have ASL interpretation here in the front. Nia Moore is providing that for us this evening. It's all one. So Nia Moore is providing that. So if you would like ASL interpretation, then we invite you to sit on this side of the sanctuary here. So thank you to Nia Moore. So this evening we welcome all people of faith, all people of consciousness, and all people of love to come together in prayer, meditation, music, and messages. The messages you'll hear this evening are being delivered from our community leaders as well as our faith leaders here in Riverside. The vigil is being held for all the children and families still detained and separated in facilities around the country. As you know, the recent executive order does not provide for the reunification of families that have already been separated, and it continues to incarcerate the most vulnerable among us. Scripture says, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters of mine, you did to me." At Riverside Community Center for Spiritual Living, our focus is to embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love. And we recognize that the policies and the actions of this administration that have separated children from their parents do not serve the highest potential of the United States of America. They do not serve the highest potential for humankind. We know that these policies and actions are born out of ignorance of humanity's true nature, that we are all one, that we are one with each other, and that we are one in and with the divine. So we call this administration to awaken to a higher state of consciousness and to a new way of being. We call all people to compassionate action now. For truly, we are one family, and we belong to each other. We belong together. So welcome to Riverside Community Center for Spiritual Living. Welcome to this candlelight and prayer vigil. And I now invite our Voice of Truth choir from Riverside Community Center for Spiritual, no, yes, I invite Dora, excuse me. I wrote the program this morning at 5 a.m., come on. I do have to say, putting on this event in 3 days' time is quite amazing and extraordinary, so thank you to everybody who helped do that. And so now I invite Dora, one of our licensed practitioners here at the Center for Spiritual Living, to do an opening prayer in both English and Spanish. Thank you, beloved.
Welcome. So this evening, we're starting with an opening prayer, affirming our unity with each other and with life itself. So I ask you to turn within, and you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes if you're called to do so. Taking a deep breath, cleansing breath, letting go of all worries and focusing on the present. As we close our eyes, we eliminate judgment and focus on our inner self, formless, colorless, without race or nationality. We connect with our spirit. That is the same spirit that lives everywhere present, which is the Spirit of God. It is only focus is to love, to be happy, abundant, in peace, in harmony, which is the same focus of God. One with life, no separation, just one. And because of this oneness is that we are gathered here this evening, recognizing that in infinite love, all is possible. And this infinite love is God, interchangeable with life. And through this power of love, we proclaim the power of transformation through love of all the world leaders, and especially the leaders of this country, as they have clarity of mind and spirit, leaving aside any thoughts and feelings of separation, where they recognize the unity of families not tied to origin, color, or race. Today, I bless each one of you here present. I bless all of you who made this service possible. I bless all the world leaders, including our President, Donald Trump. Knowing that family unity is first, and they are awakening to the possibility of a new way of life. I bless each of the speakers this evening, blessing the service with deep gratitude to an awakening of union and love. I bless all the families that are now separated from their loved ones, that the light of truth bestows over them to the prompt unification of all. We are one. Buenas noches, bienvenidos a todos. En este momento haremos una oración de inicio, afirmando nuestra unidad con cada uno de nosotros y con la vida misma. Les pido a ustedes, si gustan, cerrar sus ojos y tomar un respiro hondo y profundo, dejando ir cualquier preocupación y enfocándose en el presente. Al cerrar sus ojos, eliminamos juicios y prejuicios y nos concentramos en nuestro ser interno, sin forma, ni color, ni raza, ni nacionalidad. Nos conectamos con nuestro espíritu, que es el mismo espíritu que vive en todos, es el mismo espíritu de Dios. Que el único enfoque es amar, ser felices, abundantes, en paz, en armonía, que a su vez es el mismo enfoque que es Dios. Ser uno con la vida, donde no existe separación, solo unión. Y por esta unión es que estamos reunidos hoy, aquí, reconociendo que el amor infinito lo puede todo, y ese amor infinito es Dios, la vida misma. Y a través de ese poder de amor proclamamos el poder de transformación del amor hacia los líderes de todo el mundo y especialmente a los líderes de este país, dándoles claridad de mente y espíritu, dejando a un lado cualquier pensamiento y sensación de separación, donde reconocen la unión de familias sin importar origen, color o raza. Hoy bendigo a cada uno de ustedes aquí presente, bendigo a todos quienes hicieron posible esta vigilia, bendigo a todos los gobernantes de todos los países, incluyendo a nuestro presidente Donald Trump, sabiendo que la unidad de familia es lo primero y que el despertar a una forma de vida es posible. Bendigo a cada uno de nuestros oradores hoy, bendigo a este servicio con gratitud a un nuevo despertar de unión, amor. Bendigo las familias que están en este momento separadas y que la luz de la verdad les ilumine su camino a la unión completa. Todos somos uno. Namaste.
Good evening. I'm Dinah Williams, President of the Core Council here, and I'm going to be reading an unequivocal condemnation of family separation from the Parliament of the World's Religions. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, essential to protecting the integrity of human beings within the family of nations, reminds us that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. History teaches us that this cruelty is at its worst when it is rationalized by leadership, justified by law, and made defensible by appeals to sacred writings. The voices of the many are responsible to speak out against such aberration from our shared humanity, wherever in the world it is found. Silence and inaction equate to complicity. When a nation claims the mantle of self-evident truths under God, it bears a special responsibility to act in accordance with these truths under divine precept. And when a nation is made up of a multitude of families, each with their religious traditions, philosophies, and ethical beliefs, that nation bears a further responsibility to uphold the freedoms that families require to flourish. As a global organization dedicated to convening and connecting families of faith and conscience around the world, the Parliament of World's Religions sees the United States' recent family separation policy, which has led to the fracture of vulnerable refugee families, as an abject failure of civilized and collective life. This was a failure of leadership, a failure of policy, a failure to understand sacred texts that call for the protection of the neighbor, a failure to regard the physical and mental health of children and parents, and a colossal failure of the heart. Communities of faith and conscience must nurture families in the many forms they take and protect them by first opposing the leaders, policies, and reprehensible distortions of Scripture that threaten their future. The Parliament of the World's Religions denounces these and like-minded global policies against families and calls for all religions with which these leaders are affiliated to admonish them for their actions and to refute any religious or scriptural justification to which they appeal in their effort to rationalize or justify those actions. The damage already inflicted to immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers is extensive. While separation may have ceased, there is no infrastructure currently in place to track, locate, or return the children who have already been separated from their parents. There is still much repair to be done. But where government fails, passionate communities of faith, conscience, and people everywhere of goodwill must strive together toward a world of justice and compassion.
Good evening. I'm Mike Kataoka, and I will be reading a letter from the Association for Global New Thought, sent to President Donald Trump this past Monday, June 18th. Dear Mr. President, we write to add our voices to those crying out for the end to the immoral practice of separating children from their families at the U.S. border. On behalf of the more than 3 million of our religious supporters in the United States and worldwide, we ask, as do our brothers and sisters in all faith traditions, that you use the power of your office to reverse the zero-tolerance policy instituted by your Attorney General, and that you take into account the discretion you and your administration have in protecting the well-being of children. We ask that you end this practice immediately, exercising your legal authority to end the traumatic separation that can have no end other than the destruction of families and of these children's lives. We understand that illegal entry into the United States can be a misdemeanor criminal violation, one in which you can exercise discretion to determine who should be rightly charged and who, alternatively, are those seeking asylum from horrific conditions that we cannot begin to imagine. We understand the U.S. law allows people with a credible fear of persecution, whether as an individual or as a member of a group, to arrive at the border in search of asylum. More than that, we understand that the family is the foundation of our society, indeed our world. Without the bedrock of the family, children flounder and ultimately they fail. A policy that separates children from their families serves without exception to destabilize our country, harm our neighbors, and set the stage for generations of marginalized children who grew up disenfranchised, impoverished, and unnecessarily forced into the criminal justice system. To separate these children from their families is at minimum short-sighted. More to the point, it is cruel, it is disgraceful, and it is un-American. To use these children as pawns in a political fight is reprehensible. We implore you to end this practice immediately. In closing, we offer these thoughts from renowned spiritual philosopher Dr. Ernest Holmes, spoken in 1937. As we enter into the spirit of the meaning of U.S. Independence Day, the day when liberty symbolically was conceived, the day when freedom objectively in our country was announced, we should think of it not merely as a political system or form of government, but we should think of it as a spiritual conception, an idea in the divine mind itself, taking form in human experience. We should learn to love that liberty, and in loving the idea, we should learn to tenderly and prayerfully handle the embodiment of that idea and nourish it always to greater strength. We should really conceive again the great spiritual conception of that rugged man of God who said, that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth.
Good evening. I'm Jeannie Kataoka, and I am a licensed spiritual practitioner here. I am reading a statement from our home office, Centers for Spiritual Living, and it's entitled, Keeping Parents and Children Together, A Call for Humanity. Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Matthew chapter 25, verses 40 and 45. The spectacle of children of refugees, most fleeing violence in their homelands, being separated often with force from the arms of their parents at the United States border, is an offense against humanity, devoid of any sense of compassion. This policy of the administration of President Donald J. Trump, ordered by United States Attorney General Jefferson Sessions, is being done without being enacted into law by the Congress and without current review by the courts. At this writing, which was last Tuesday, over 2,000 children have been separated from parents and are being held in detention centers in the United States. Mr. Sessions also did away with a policy that made it possible to give asylum to women who are victims of domestic abuse or who are raped or threatened by gang members in their home countries. We are for human rights in every instance, said Reverend Dr. Ken Gordon, spiritual leader of Centers for Spiritual Living. We call on the White House to reverse this inhumane policy immediately and to reunite the many families who have been forcibly separated. Centers for Spiritual Living joins the many voices of religious denominations and civic organizations in the calling for an end to these practices and a return to a more humane set of policies for families as their cases are processed. Basic human decency requires nothing less. We must also recognize the emotional damage being done to parents and children alike and work to heal the damage done. The fact that the administration cited biblical references to justify their actions is an affront to anyone who holds sacred scripture dear. We should remember that separation of children from their parents by force, according to the Bible they cite, was done by the pharaohs of Egypt and Pontius Pilate. The core message of the Holy Bible is love, not obedience to secular authority. Tearing children from the arms of their families for the purpose of deterring migration is both cruel and unlawful. Family unity is a fundamental human right, recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court and the United Nations. Since many of those families being separated are seeking asylum, the current policy is even more egregious. We call on our local spiritual communities to speak out on this issue. We call on the U.S. Congress to act to overrule this cruel administrative policy if the administration will not act. We join other communities of faith in demanding a more humane governmental approach to issues of migration and asylum seeking. We know that when we recognize our mutual humanity, our fear dissipates and compassion pours forth. Let our actions reflect that wisdom. And I'll close with a quote from Ernest Holmes, the founder of our philosophy. I salute the God presence in everyone I meet, and I know that as surely as I do, the love dwelling in them responds to the same presence that is within me. We act in unison of peace and understanding.
I now invite Eleanor Kalnin from the law offices of Hadley Baramovich, who will be, I said it, yeah, your person told me how to say that, it was great. Who will be addressing us from the perspective of the immigration law offices. So thank you.
It's not an easy last name, so I give you a lot of kudos for that. Oh my gosh, I think I just deleted my notes. Okay, give me one moment. Of course this would happen. So my name is Eleanor Kalnin, and I'm a paralegal at the Immigration Law Offices of Hadley Baramovich, and I've been there for about 7 years now. I have the great honor of coming to speak on behalf of Hadley and read her statement as she prepared it this weekend. After a long week of working, Monday through Friday, she drove out to Escondido and worked Saturday and Sunday this weekend to help with a mobile consulate that was down in Escondido to provide services, free services, to anyone in the community that was interested in coming. And over the course of 2 days, she met with 300 people, hearing their stories, talking to them, trying to figure out any kind of solution or help that she could offer to them. So understandably, she could not be here. After doing that, she rushed over to a baby shower, and she also prepared this statement. So I will read on her behalf. So our office has been located in Riverside and Moreno Valley for about a decade, and we find paths and solutions for foreign nationals. The solutions are not available to everyone, not because our clients are a threat to the community. Our clients almost never pose a threat to the community. But the problem is with difficult immigration laws, which disqualify people from lawful status, and now the unconstitutional lack of due process and deteriorating checks and balances. To say on social media or to tell the nation that the solution is that foreign nationals must come in legally or as a response to the immigration crisis is naive and uninformed. Yet we hear this every day, mostly spoken with emotions of anger, resentment, and fear. And we have outdated immigration laws with very limited ways to solve immigration issues. And now, those very few avenues which we use to obtain status for those who have been here for a long time, with families working hard to support their children and send them to college, are being removed by this administration. Why would we want to remove these families who share our values and amazing work ethic and talent? Why are so many so threatened by people who live next door and want a peaceful neighborhood as much as you? I do not understand it. But the current administration is chipping away at the foundations of law by destroying due process and checks and balances for the purpose of removing our neighbors, our friends, and our families who have an unfortunate circumstance which they cannot control or just become legal at will. At first, the erosion was slow. Now, the zero tolerance policy, our heads are spinning as we try to keep up with the changes, as you can see from the weekend. AG Sessions now is the head of immigration courts, as well as the appellate court, the USCIS agency, which is Immigration Services, the Immigration Police, which is ICE and CBP, the Border Patrol, and immigration detention facilities, and now federal prisons, with migrants, the federal prisons which now hold detainees in the Victorville Federal Prison, and minors are on their way. All interior and border immigration services are led by AG Sessions. The only check that seems to work, as Congress does nothing, is the state of California and the laws which have been passed in California to protect due process. We have the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals here. And because of the independence from Sessions, which gives us the slightest hope for our clients, Sessions is punishing California by ordering raids and providing additional resources to ICE to achieve that end. Due process has been thrown out the window by ICE enforcement. At this moment, attorneys are being denied access to those who are detained and are fighting for immigration relief. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, this is an aside from Hallie's statement, we are sending people out to the detention facilities where undocumented immigrants have been prevented from meeting with anyone, attorneys or otherwise. Procedures are interpreted to benefit the ICE agencies and their goals to deport. Procedures, which were already vague and almost impossible to understand, are now being used to detain people who seek to change their status and file applications to come into compliance with immigration laws. The worst day that I have had this year happened in an adjustment of status green card interview. My client, who has been in the United States since he was an infant, entered the U.S. legally. He married a beautiful woman, and they were happy until the ICE agents burst into our marriage-based interview and placed handcuffs on him on that day. And he was told that he was being deported the same day. ICE took him into the parking lot at the same USCIS office in San Bernardino and sent a message to everyone attending the interviews that day by placing him into an ICE vehicle for all to see. Purposeful and intentional humiliation. Through God's mercy and strength, I was able to stop the deportation, but the psychological damage will never be gone for this couple. The courts are now compromised by Sessions' leadership, as we saw in the recent decision by the Board of Immigration Appeals, which ended protections for asylum seekers who are victims of domestic violence. Immigration laws now are in contradiction as Congress passed laws which protect victims of domestic violence without status in the Violence Against Women Act. And by creating the U visa for victims of domestic violence and other crimes who are undocumented and who report the crimes without fear of removal. These laws reflect the American spirit, that we protect the vulnerable and the persecuted. Immigration laws and enforcement are now in chaos, as ICE runs roughshod over the rights of those who are detained. They effect removals quickly so that attorneys cannot file applications for relief, and demand a judge review before the deportation happens. I've seen this many times at my office with the attorneys rushing home, driving crazy to get back to the office. They have to file something immediately and drive all the way out to LA in the same day within a few hours. This happens very often. A typical scenario, ICE watches the home of a target for several days. They arrest their target at 4 a.m. after learning the schedule and family behavior for the purpose of mitigating resistance, and then deports the target at 4 p.m. the same day. We fear for our clients, as we cannot predict the behavior of ICE, the courts, or the USCIS officers. I believe that we are living in a social contract in which we have laws to protect society so that we can be safe and live harmoniously. Until now. Because of this change, we now have a process which we call preparation. Through tears, our clients try to comprehend that moment of horror when ICE arrives at the door or pulls them over while they drive, legally, thanks to AB 60, or ICE sweeps at their workplace. Through preparation, we help them to know how to advocate for themselves and prepare for their children that they may leave behind. We should never have to prepare a mother for permanent separation from her children. We should never have to prepare children for losing their parents. These people live in constant fear, and yet they go to work doing the jobs that we as U.S. citizens do not want to do. They go to school hoping for a better future in which they will be able to help their parents. These children know that their parents gave up a beloved home and family, and they admire and love their parents for that sacrifice. Imagine that sacrifice, if you will. Imagine if you had to suddenly uproot your family and go to a foreign country, and upon arrival, your family is torn apart. In my work at the consulate, I am learning that parents have had to make the choice to leave their children and go back to Guatemala, or stay in detention for an unknown period of time and wait to be reunited with their children. The parents are choosing to leave their children so that their children can have a better chance for a better life. And I cannot imagine that sacrifice and what circumstances led a parent to make that decision. But I hear these stories every day from our clients who love their countries, but they must escape for fear. Their lives are filled with horror, and then they are willing to endure the horrors of separation by ICE. The people seeking safety at our border are not fazed by the zero tolerance policy, and that is because what is happening in the home country is worse than what is happening at the border. This vigil is not the only event in which you can support against family separation. I see that you've posted that the June 30th event at 10 a.m. at the Galleria in Riverside is an event that is going on. You can see it on the front of your program. In addition to that event, MoveOn.org has a list of events that you can find using your zip code. That's MoveOn.org, and they have events all across the nation on June 30th for this event. In addition, my attorney wants to encourage you to follow the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, which is known as ICIJ, on Facebook or Instagram. Our office is a part of that coalition, and we all fight to defend the immigrant community in the Inland Empire. Her final words are, remember, history is repeating itself. And we have seen this horror before, and we must be responsible for the change that we want to see in the world. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for having me.
When Reverend Jeff contacted me just 2 or 3 days ago, said, would you like to be involved with this event this evening? it took me several hours to get back to him because I was trying to think of what in the world I could sing that would fit. Some songs were mentioned. I didn't think any of them worked. So I had to write one. I know, I get it. We've got to have laws to bring some order to the clamoring throngs, to settle our differences, help us get along. There's all kinds of people and all kinds of laws. There's the law of the jungle, the law of the land, the law of the Bible, and of the Quran. There's laws of the nation and natural laws. No law is perfect, and that gives us pause to think about mercy, to think about love, to offer compassion when law's not enough. For justice is blind, not blinded by fear, but blind to be equal, blind to be fair. Laws help us keep order, or so it appears. But laws are reactions, they all spring from fears. We never need laws when we understand the other guy's doing the best that he can. For justice is blind, not blinded by fear, but blind to be equal and blind to be fair. So think about mercy and think about love and offer compassion when law's not enough. So what do you do? What do you call it when things turn around? And those sworn to protect us instead shoot us down. Or when those who serve us tear us apart, break up our families and rip up our hearts. It's hard to get over, get my head around this fear that can turn the world upside down. In squad cars or White House, or on benches they sit, peacekeepers unwittingly conspire to commit crimes against humanity, crimes against humanity. Cry for the families, outrageous atrocities. Justice is blind, not blinded by fear, but blind to be equal and blind to be fair. So think about mercy and think about love law's not enough, and offer compassion when law's not enough.
I'd like to invite Darlena Moore to the platform, and she will be followed by Hilda Cruz, organizer for the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for coming. I'm going to be reading a piece by Amy Stillman, written on Facebook, actually, June 21st at 1:26 p.m. You guys have to excuse me if my voice shakes, I'm nervous. In the morning, I think of these children. As I kiss my little ones, I wonder how these children will wake up. Is it a bright light being turned on? A guard's loud yell? Who helps them get dressed if they're too young to dress themselves? The guards aren't allowed to touch the kids. The prisoners aren't allowed to touch each other. Do they even have clothes? Or do they have the ones they came with? Or are they prison issued? Maybe they're the cheap sweatsuits I've heard about. Who brushes their hair, their teeth? I pour my coffee and make breakfast. What are the children eating? Who's whispering, just eat so you don't get in trouble, when a little one starts to cry because this isn't the food that he's used to? Mid-morning, I help my son wipe. I wonder if the children can go to the bathroom when they want to, or is it on a schedule? What if they have an accident, even if they're past diapers, because of the trauma of being ripped from their parents' arms are too much? Wait, do they even have diapers? Who changes those? Who gets them fresh clothes, a bath, or do they have to sit in it? Are they shamed by the overworked guards who have no training in this? My son rides his bike. Do they even go outside? I read my daughter a book. Will they have books? Will they go to school in the fall? At lunch, my kids shrug off the food I've made for them. No big deal. They can eat it later. This isn't a prison cafeteria. But what about the kids who do eat in prison? How does that work? What if the little ones get hungry? Do they have snack time? Do they have a nap time? As I watch my child run through the sprinkler in the afternoon, his face has a broad grin. I contemplate whether or not this could be his bath. I wonder who is bathing the children since they cannot touch them. How are the little ones getting cleaned? Who is toweling them dry? Do they even get towels or baths? Is that why we're not seeing the little ones? Are they filthy, disheveled, or worse? Are they disappearing into the foster care system, adopted without parental permission, as some fear, or worse? My kids wonder why I cry. What can I tell them about without breaking them too? Over the course of the afternoon, my toddler bumps her head. My son falls off of a log, escaping with scrapes and bruises. Reflectively, I go to them, asking them if they're okay, holding them as they cry. Who comforts these children when they fall? Who gets them a bandage? Who kisses their boo-boos and owies, notices that their heads feel warm, or worries about them having a fever or a cold? As I cook my children dinner, they ask for a snack because they're hungry and can't wait. I think of these children. What are they having for dinner tonight? Who will feed the ones that are too young to feed themselves? Do they have infant formula, baby food? As I tuck my children into bed and read them their favorite book again, I kiss them a little too fiercely. Are these children crying themselves to sleep at night? Does the policy of no touching extend to the 8-month-old, the kid with Down syndrome, the blind kid in an unfamiliar environment? As I fall asleep, I think of these children. Are they still awake, unable to sleep? Are they having nightmares with no one to comfort them? Are they learning to be quiet so they don't attract the wrong attention? Is someone yelling? Who is protecting the pretty girls from rape in the quiet of the night? The boys too. I'm so lucky. My children are so lucky. My birth, my pure, undeserved, unearned luck. I am on this side of the line, but I could so easily have been different, had different luck, a different birthright. My country could be too violent, my life unsafe. Will that happen here? Will I be separated from my children for being outspoken or a sympathizer? Our country has descended to here. Who knew it was so fragile? We teeter on the precipice of dictatorship. Our democracy is in shreds. People's true colors are revealed. I can't sleep. I would like to share a quick quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Vietnamese Buddhist monk and peace activist. He said, "Everything can begin with you. You are the foundation of any change that will happen in your society." Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am honored and happy that you guys invited me here. I have been organizing communities of faith around the issue of immigration for a long time. And this evening, I am going to read you a statement that our organization, which is a coalition of many, many churches of all denominations, have put together this week. And then, of course, I'm going to invite you into action, because action must begin with us. And by the way, I am also part of the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, which I also represent here tonight. Faith traditions and common human values calls us to honor the dignity and humanity of all people, and their incarceration, detention, and policies which separate and divide families fail to honor the delicate preciousness of each human life. Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity sees migration as a sacred act, not one that should be prosecuted or criminalized. Migration is an act of courage and often great sacrifice for others. Too often it involves unnecessary risk and danger and uncertainty caused by human loss. Almost always it relies on the deepest faith in the holy and the kindness of strangers. The face of the migrant is where we as a society are invited to see God or the divine. While we must indeed condemn the manufactured human rights crisis for families at the border, which is a cruel policy of deterrence and expansion of the deportation machine, we must also address the larger issues, the separation of families embedded in a whole set of anti-immigrant policies and the practice of detention and mass incarceration that affects many poor and families of color. We ask you to help us promote these broader messages and hope that they are helpful to you, most especially this week as our whole nation calls us to action. We call for an end to all forms of immigration detention. This includes children, family, asylum seekers, green card holders, and other non-citizens with former convictions who have served their time. There are many alternatives to detention, and we as a society must commit to humane and dignified alternatives. The Trump administration or Congress can implement community accompaniment programs through which relatives or local organizations take responsibility for making sure that immigrants and asylum seekers can have their day in court with due process instead of being caged in a system that is deliberately set up to prevent them from accessing legal counsel or other support. Immigration detention, like incarceration as a whole, does not solve social problems, but causes suffering and disintegrates families and communities. It enriches and profits private prisons and the prison industrial security complex that have already targeted, disenfranchised, and criminalized Black communities throughout history. The separation of parents and children at the border is just one example of how the many immigration practices of ICE and the administration is separating our families. This includes detention of parents, the Muslim ban, cutting refugee numbers, the cancellation of temporary protected status, we call TPS, the cancellation of DACA, changing these policies or other asylum policies, and deportation of anyone. This is what is going on. This is the reality of what is also happening. Proposed immigration legislation has repeatedly included limiting legal migration numbers and threatened to eliminate family migration as a central tenet of our immigration system. Current anti-immigrant policy is anti-family, and this has become code for racism and white supremacy. These are the following steps that I'm inviting you to act on, okay? Very local. I'm gonna talk about the local work, because yes, we have some great organizations on your program tonight, but this is the local work of what I'm gonna invite you. The city of Riverside and other local cities in the Inland Valleys are taking positions against SB 54, the California Values Act. This is a bill that was passed last year in hopes that these ICE raids would not be happening in worship spaces like today, in hospitals, in libraries, in schools. It is under attack by these anti-immigrant groups. These are hate groups. They have targeted the Inland Valleys because we still hold some ultra-conservative governments in place, and so this is what's been going on. The city of Riverside is expected to hold this city council meeting on July 10th. There is a campaign currently right now where we're inviting all of you to write an email to all of your elected city council members. Make sure you copy the clerk. We want to make sure that they hear the voice of every individual. And I'm also inviting even those who are not from the city of Riverside. And why, might you ask? Because the other side started in Arizona. And they don't care that these are not their cities. They're still coming around and rousing hate. SB 54 was passed by the majority of people in California as a way to protect the immigrant community that we value and cherish in California. I invite you to call your conservative House representatives. Paul Cook, I'm going to mention the phone number. This is his phone number in the DC office. They need to hear from us, even though he's in the high desert. His phone number is area code 202-225-5861. We have Ken Calvert, phone number 202-225-1986. Not only are they conservative, but they have tendencies to be anti-immigrant. They need to hear from us. Tell them there is a current bill that is being put on or written by Ryan, and it's a very anti-immigrant bill. Tell them not to vote on it. Let's keep an eye on those bills that are anti-immigrant. That will not help any of our families. I see a hand back there. we are hoping that if you can sign on somehow today, we can connect you to all of these and get you all of this information too. I know it's a lot, okay, but hopefully we can connect, have a sign up. And then the other thing that I was going to invite is have another meeting in about 2 weeks' time. And let's also talk about some more of the local work, because we do know that we have a lot of families and the children are being separated in Texas, in Arizona, in San Diego. San Diego, we're about what? Close to 100 miles away from San Diego. It's not that easy to do the work when you're this far away, but we can do other things at the local level. And so I'm inviting you to host another meeting where we can come together and talk about some of the other very local work. We must reclaim sanctuary. Not only reclaim it, but practice it at this time. We heard the stories. These children, we have no systems in place for these children to be turned back to their family members. These children are going to need a home. They're going to need a loving place where they can be healed of the trauma. I don't know if we're willing to step up to the plate. I go to the detention center up in Adelanto. This week we met with 2 people from Honduras who came 3 months ago seeking for a better life. They're stuck there. There is no due process for them. They have no money. They know no one here in the States. They're alone. Yet, because of their stories, they could claim asylum. But because they are incarcerated and detained, they cannot work outside to work on their legal paperwork that is needed. This is a type of work that we can engage in, a part of sanctuary, of walking with and being present and accompanying this one person who cannot be outside and contact even his mother. You need money to be able to make calls from the detention center. He has no family members who can deposit money for him to be able to make a long distance call. So I invite you also to somehow connect to this work, become visitors or friends, people who write little notes, or someone who's able to deposit $10, $15 into their account so that they can contact their family members. So the coalition is very active. We have lawyers who are very involved also, but there's a lot of work. And the work, the civil work is being done, but I encourage you as people of faith, people connected to the divine, to be able to get involved. Much healing needs to happen, and we must be the ones who go out there and offer this healing. And I invite you to this. Thank you very much for having me here.
As I listen to, well, first off, my name's Tony Richardson. I'm a member here of Riverside Community Center for Spiritual Living. As I listen to everything being spoken, and of course, various media has been pounding us for, well, almost 2 years now, I sit here and question, what can I do? So many times I'm filled with fear. I acknowledge the privilege that I grew up in. I acknowledge that I have resources. That does not negate the fear that comes with that. But one thing that I know is that we all have skills and abilities. One thing I know that unites us even more are these divine characteristics that each of us hold, that is inherent as a living being on this planet, a conscious being, a spiritual being. We have characteristics that can take away the fear. We are love. We are joy. We are power and we are peace. As a vocalist and a musician, the strongest, most unifying skill that I have is something that unites the world, and that is music. It touches our hearts. It connects us in spirit, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of orientation, regardless of location. So I'd like you to think of those characteristics of love, joy, power, and peace, and let those characteristics fill that space within you that has fear, that has questions. In doing that through song, I'd like to lead you in a song together. I'm going to sing the first one through, but then I want you to come in and fill in that love, joy, power, and peace. I send my love over the mountains. I send my love over the seas. I send my love into the heavens, and it returns to me. Send your love with me. I send my love over the mountains. I send my love over the seas. I send my love into the heavens, and it returns to me. I send my joy over the mountains. I send my joy over the seas. I send my joy into the heavens, and it returns to me. I send my power over the mountains. I send my power over the seas. I send my power into the heavens, and it returns to me. I send peace in over the mountains. I send peace over the seas. I send peace into the heavens, and it returns to me. But it starts with love. I send my love over the mountains. I send my love over the sea. I send my love into the heavens, and it returns to me.
I now invite Vicki Ross to the platform. She has a couple of statements from some of our community organizers here in the Valley, or here in Riverside. And she will be followed by Robert Merrill, and then Dr. Victoria Bomberry.
I want to thank everybody personally for coming tonight. My good friend Loopy from work on a couple-day notice of can you come, and she's always been one to come. My sisters in the Resistance Revival, that email went out I think on Thursday, and Rev Jeff said I pushed him down the slide, but I didn't have to push that hard. I'm very, very grateful to be a part of this spiritual center. Social justice is extremely important to me, and I couldn't wait till the 30th. I just couldn't. So I'm going to read a couple statements from our wonderful community leaders here in Riverside who were unable to be here and very disappointed that they couldn't be here, but they're here in spirit. The first one is Alicia Elzig from Invisible 41. They were honored to write these statements, and I'm honored to read them. It is times like these that we need each other the most, when the world seems like it's gone crazy, when we feel like we've somehow been transported to another universe, a universe all we believe in and hold true has been turned upside down. Our first response is outrage. How could these atrocities be happening in my country we love, in the country we love? How can the country that professes life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all be imprisoning children and innocent people simply seeking a better life? We channel our outrage into action. We call our congressmen, we write letters, we gather by thousands to protest the actions of a hateful, racist administration. We resist, we fight, we vow that we will never give up. But we see it go on and on. It seems no matter how much we resist, the horror continues. Just when we think we've seen the worst, something else happens. Will it stop? Can we possibly go on? Can we possibly see this through? Yes, we can. We can because we stand by each other. We can because we have each other's backs. We can because we can feel like we can't take another minute. There is someone else standing beside us, holding us up in the power of humanity, the power of our values that pushes us forward, holds us together. It is the power of us that we get through this. It is the power of us that we believe and bring about change we so desperately need. It is the power of us holding each other up, urging us to persevere. It is the power of love. It is the power of love of our fellow human beings, of each other, of this planet, because love, no matter how dark the days become, always prevails. As you gather tonight, as you pray for change, as you hope for a better life for those who are persecuted, remember that. Remember, as we stand together in the power of love, that we will be victorious, that love and goodness will prevail. Alicia Elzig, Invisible 41. And this is from Shawnee Beeman, Rise Up, California. For those of you who know me and have spent any time lately reading my Facebook posts, you know that I am frustrated beyond measure with the current immigration situation involving separating children from their families. Contacting my elected representatives, donating to charities and legal aid, and helping to organize local awareness and dissent are in my wheelhouse. As you may have noticed, I've been working overtime. On Thursday, I joined Hilda Cruz and Rabbi Singer as part of the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity to visit an immigration detainee at the Adelanto prison. This is a private prison currently holding immigrants, and it is expected to soon hold separated children and families. The immigrant I visited, along with my Spanish-speaking partner Philip, spent our allotted 1 hour telling us the story about his life in Honduras. We have it so good here. And his journey north. He is 24 years old, and he fled Honduras after several of his military colleagues were murdered by gangs. He spoke of the rise in gang activity since the elections in 2012. He served 2 years of mandatory conscription in the Air Force, and his attempts to hide that fact from the local gangs failed, and he was having to hide. He decided to leave, but was captured by the Border Patrol as he crossed into the U.S. in the desert near Mexicali. He has been in detention since March and has had 2 hearings without any legal representation. He received some assistance with filling out forms for asylum, but 95% of asylum petitions from Honduras are denied. He has 1 more hearing in July, and he fears will be his last before being deported. I plan to be there for this hearing. Witnessing for him is about the only thing I can offer. There is no easy answer to fixing our broken immigration system, but certainly before sharing your opinion, I highly recommend you sit with and listen to the story of someone who has experienced it. It is humbling, and I guarantee it will enrich your perspective. Now more than ever, I believe that I am not actively working on a solution. Now more than ever, I believe that if I am not actively working on a solution, then I am part of the problem. And I still plan to travel to McAllen, Texas, probably sometime in mid-July. Let me know if you're interested in joining me. Shawnee Beeman, Rise Up, California. Thank you for being here, everybody.
I really want to rip this up and just start screaming, but good evening. After another anxiety-provoking, infuriating day, full of images of families ripped apart, it's comforting and a privilege to be among like-minded people. Picture these scenes. It's 1718 and a boy says, "Father, may I have a horse?" 1818 and a boy says, "Father, may I have a carriage?" 1918, "Father, may I have an automobile?" 2018, "Hey, I want Grand Theft Auto." Though the uber-rich may agree to their child's wants easily, the average parent worships, knowingly or not, at the church of capitalism that has one commandment: thou shalt work hard to appreciate what thou hast. Deeply woven into the DNA of this country, the Protestant work ethic functions as the religion of capitalism. Work hard and you shall be rewarded, not in heaven, but on earth. Not successful? Then burn in poverty for your laziness. Think about the movies and TV shows that we grew up on. You can easily imagine Mr. Hardy, Mr. Cleaver, Mr. Taylor, or Mr. Brady putting his hand on his son's shoulder and saying, "Now, son, you're going to have to work for this and earn the money yourself so you'll appreciate it more." Parents fear, and rightly so, raising an Ethan Couch, he of affluenza infamy, or a Brock Turner, he of white rape privilege infamy. We understand that indulging your child's every whim fertilizes any underlying sociopathic tendencies. So parents make kids work for what they want. Sometimes it's in the form of a barter. You do these chores and I'll get you what you want. Sometimes it's more of a marketplace transaction. You provide these services and I'll give you this allowance and you can buy what you want. The faith in the Protestant work ethic is really unquestioned in this society. Oh, by kids, yes, but by adults, no. So given that, can we apply the Protestant work ethic to immigrants, to those who seek asylum at our borders? Who appreciates our citizenship more? People born in this country through no effort of their own, or those who risk their lives and those of their children to escape economic despair and or physical threats, having traveled hundreds of miles under often brutal conditions? Who appreciates the Constitution more? Those who barely paid attention in American government, or those who had to learn the Constitution deeply to pass their citizenship test? Who appreciates the Statue of Liberty, also known as the Mother of Exiles? Who appreciates it more? Those who see it as a symbol of nationalism, or those who see it as a true beacon of hope? How can we, a moral nation, a rich nation, much less a supposedly Christian nation, view families seeking asylum without compassion, without some, to turn a word, allowance? And what would this allowance cost us? Economically, for the vast majority of us, nothing. Will there be cost to adjudicate asylum seekers? Sure. But all credible studies show that immigration is a major contributor to economic growth, especially considering the United States' almost flat birth rate. And immigrants pay a far greater share in taxes than they receive in benefits. Will this allowance cost us our safety? Though salacious reporting often focuses on outlier cases of immigrant crime, all credible studies show that immigrants are far less likely to commit crimes than homegrown Americans. And frankly, keeping children with their families would still be worth a risk, even if one existed. After the cataclysm of November 2016, I found my liver in peril. I was spending too many hours at Mario's between 4 and 6 o'clock. Happy hour became forgetting hour. Like some of you, I lost my equilibrium, a victim of political vertigo. I eventually found my footing. Rather than drink a third or a fourth martini, I purposefully began seeking evidence of resistance to the red tide of racism and xenophobia that washes over us. I studied, partly because of the homegrown activism of groups such as Rise Up California and Indivisible 41. Though social media delivers evidence of hatred every minute to every device, it also provides images of the Women's March and March for Our Lives and the Riverside Resistance Revival Chorus. Thank you, ladies. Not since the Vietnam era have so many Americans showed up in such robust numbers to fight for the soul of this country. We also have the singular bravery of the lone resistor, such as the manager at Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf in Riverside, who refused to serve and ejected a man spewing vile invective at a Muslim woman wearing the traditional clothing of her faith. Another element in regaining some semblance of sanity was rediscovering John W. Gardner, a Republican in the Johnson administration. His writings were introduced to me by my AP English teacher in 1978, and if you have a chance, I strongly urge you to read his book, Morale. I want to share with you a few things that he got right and one thing that he got wrong. Something he got right. If you have some respect for people as they are, you can be more effective in helping them become better than they are. I struggle with this. But as difficult as it may be to suffer the virulence of what some may say, responding with the same ugliness will only reinforce their position, whereas responding with a degree of grace may soften, however slightly, their hardness. This brings me to something else that Gardner got right. Our problem is not to find better values, but to be faithful to those we profess. I know many of us are, and this really is one of my new favorite words, and sorry, translators, but many of us are exhaustipated. At times, too tired to give a crap. But that's not a luxury that we have. The generations that fought for the North in the Civil War, who prevented fascism from cloaking the globe during World War II, and who fought and still fight the multi-generational battle for civil rights, didn't have the luxury to Netflix and chill. You know who else doesn't have the luxury to disengage? The kids on buses and planes dispersed across this country to tents and cages, nor their parents wild in their grief for their missing children. Gardner reminds us that every important battle must be fought and refought. It's now our turn on the front lines to be faithful to those values that we profess to the full extent that our energies will allow. For some, that will mean organizing the resistance. For others, it will be marching and singing in the streets. For others, it's giving what they can to those politicians and organizations battling to regain control of the levers of power. For others, it may be a quiet talk with a relative who's been watching too much Fox News. We all must do what we can, where we can, when we can, because it's all important. Finally, here's something that Gardner got wrong. He stated, history never looks like history when you are living through it. No. Undoubtedly, when we see the pictures of families separated and interned, and hear reports of children being drugged and abused, we feel the weight of our history and the history yet to be written bearing down on us. And we will have to answer as a society and as individuals, what did you do during the resistance? Thank you for allowing me to share this communion with you tonight.
Good evening. I'm always happy to be back at my home. This is my spiritual home. When I came to Riverside, I found this place and it changed my life for the better. And I'm so happy to see us rising to this occasion in a way that we probably weren't able to do a few years ago. And I am so proud when I look out at all of the faces here and I see that there is a committed group of people who are ready to stand up and do exactly what they are called to do in this moment. My name is Victoria Bomberry. I am an enrolled member of the Muskogee Nation. We have endured forced migration from our homelands in the southeast of the United States. We lost nearly 3/4 of our tribe during this forced migration. We have suffered those injustices that are being visited upon our southern relatives. Now, all of us, I think, have started to open our hearts. Our hearts were jolted open, actually, weren't they? Our hearts were jolted open when we saw those images of those children in cages, when we realized that families were being torn apart. And every person in here, I know, has a story in their background that speaks to these kinds of violences. I know that I immediately thought of my people on this forced march. I thought of the Japanese internments. And when I saw people posting online about their experiences in boarding schools, I said, yes, that's my parents. And we know that this doesn't stop here, right? This is something that is generational. What I know that our sister said that there's healing that needs to be done, and yes, the healing starts now. We know what we have endured. We know that we have come out on the other side of that with a heart that is soft and open. And that's the miracle here. We're not hard. We are open and we are ready to serve. And I am so grateful for that. I'm grateful that we don't give up, that we have this resilience to continue. And I really loved what Robert Merrill said, that history doesn't start right now, right? We're living through this historic moment, but I see it as this ongoing story of America. We can't congratulate ourselves yet. We're not able to congratulate ourselves yet. But when I look out in this room, I see that we are unifying in a much more powerful way than we have ever been able to before. And what is that? That's because we are willing to look at our problems face on. And we are willing to step into creating solutions for those problems. The Haudenosaunee say, in every deliberation, we must consider the impact on the seventh generation. And that is exactly what we need to do. The Haudenosaunee are dedicated to peace, and it is something that we are dedicating ourselves to now. Because if we don't step up to peace now, we cannot have peace in the seventh generation. We cannot have peace ever. We have to start now. And we have to start that healing right now. I'm glad to hear these stories. I'm happy to see people opening up and saying they are ready to do whatever they can possibly do. Last week, a group of us from different parts of the United States started an alliance called the Indigenous Peoples Alliance for Our Southern Relatives. And we know that there are many people who are coming from the South who do not speak Spanish, they do not speak English, and they are being left out. They are the most vulnerable in this situation. And years ago, during the civil wars in Central America, I worked with many Guatemalan people who were running for their lives. They were running from war. And we are reaping what started then. We really are. We exported gangs from California to Central America. We did not open our hearts at that point to welcome and enfranchise those people who were here and were vulnerable and were ready to serve in the way that they know how. That's all anyone ever wants. All anyone ever wants is that respect as a human being, their dignity. And that's what was denied 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and now. But we're at a point where we're ready. We're ready to do something. We have those resources in us to do something different than we've ever done before. And I know that we can work locally, we can work nationally, we can work in whatever capacity that we are called to work in. The education is absolutely necessary, that we get the word out of what people are doing in this wonderful forum. Thank you, Reverend Jeff, for organizing this in a short amount of time. The education that we have to do to say there are other needs out there that need to be met with language and interpreters for Indigenous people. And also, just thinking about daily life for a lot of our Indigenous people who are on the border, who are not having an easy time crossing the border to see their relatives because of the change in the administration. These are just basic human rights that many people take for granted in this country. But we are all relatives, and that is another one of our basic values. When we look at one another, we see that relative in the other person. We make a point of creating relatives all over. Those friendships, those heart connections, that's what gets us through. That's what makes us human. And I am so proud of all of you for being here. And when I look out in this room, I see people that I know and love, that I have gone through things with, little things, big things, loving things, joyful things, sad things, and I know we can do that. And that's what we are embarked upon in this moment. And we rise, and we work from our heart, and we put our minds together to come to those solutions that are absolutely necessary to create the world that we want to live in. That's the power that we have. That's the power that we have. And that's the power that our relatives from the South have too. They're here to work side by side with us to create that world that we all want to live in, that world where we recognize our relatedness and our love for one another, our common love, that deep friendship. And I just urge every person here to make contact with the representatives from all of these organizations and step up. If you can house somebody, if you can befriend somebody, if you can visit somebody, if you have a special skill, step up. Step up right now, because this is our opportunity. This is what we came here to do. This is what we came here to do. And I'm loving seeing these young people here. I love that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having that heart and having that strength to step through this difficult time. And we will come through, and we will be victorious.
Go out and tell our story. Let it echo far and wide. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. How justice was our battle and how justice was denied. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. and say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles that are more than black or white, and I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Go out and tell the story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And tell them in our struggle we were not the only ones. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Your sword can be a sermon or the power of the pen. Teach every child to raise his voice, and then, my brothers, then will justice be demanded by 10 million righteous men. Make them hear you. When they hear you, I'll be near you again.
That is our beloved Sean Arthur from Riverside Community Center for Spiritual Living. And now I invite Allison Berry to read a statement from Reverend Aaron Thomas of Calvary Presbyterian. And she will be followed by our other beloved here, Kathy Shear, Reverend Kathy Shear from Unity Fellowship Church.
This was inspired by Isaiah chapter 58, verses 6 through 12. Hope. I hope that the recent outcry about the separations of immigrant families has brought us in touch with our humanity. I hope that outrage over this policy that caused children to be taken away from their parents made us imagine what it would be like for our children or grandchildren if this happened to us. I hope this tragedy makes us realize that we need to find a way to keep families and our communities intact because they are being torn apart in 1,000 ways. There is still a great need for healing of the injustice and inequality that continues in our great nation, even today. I hope that our eyes have been opened to the pain and the possibilities. I hope that we can begin to see each other's hearts instead of building walls between us, and begin the difficult but necessary conversations that will repair the breach.
Please welcome Reverend Kathy Shear.
Good evening. I wanted to talk to you about scars. A lot of us have gotten scars in our lifetime, and for a while they're there, and then eventually they heal, and you probably don't even remember how you got those scars. But I know some children who are getting some scars that will probably never totally heal. The child who is ripped away from her mother while she's breastfeeding. That child is going to have some scars. Not only does she have, the mother is going to have scars, the mother's milk was probably going to dry up by the time she ever sees that child again. But the thing about a mother's milk is it gives that child nutrients and keeps them from getting sick. All of that is gone, all because of laws. And this isn't new. It didn't just start happening. It's happened for almost the entire country's lifetime. First, it was the indigenous American Indians. We rounded them up. We took their land and we put them onto reservations. We killed their food supply to almost extinction. And then we needed help. So we started importing African Americans, who we still treat badly today. And if they didn't make the trip or somebody died, they just threw a whole bunch of them overboard. Oops. We can't keep oopsing here. And then when World War II happened, we put them in camps, the Japanese. Really? We cannot keep making the same mistakes again and again. We are destroying our future. We are giving scars that will not heal. And we can't stay quiet anymore. We have got to do something. When I was trying to figure out what to talk about tonight, I did a little research, and of course I can't find his name here. Martin Moeller wrote something back in World War II. First they came for the communists, but I was not a communist, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for the Jews. I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists. I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics. I didn't speak up then either. I wasn't a Catholic. I was a Protestant. But then they came for me. There was nobody left to speak for me. We need to speak for them because we're running out of people that are willing to fight and speak. And sooner or later, it could be me or you. So stand up, fight, be accounted for. Don't remain silent anymore. We can't afford to, because this country needs you. Thank you.
Is this one on? There we go. It is my honor to welcome the Riverside Resistance Revival Chorus under the direction of Jerry Mendeville. Did I get it right, Jerry? Yes. All right. Please welcome the chorus.
There's just been so much depth and meaning in everything that's been spoken tonight that I can't even begin to try to follow that. So I'll just tell you that our chorus was founded about 9 months ago. in one of our most important missions is to protest social injustice, inspire activism, and to unify the community through song. That's what we're about. Only about half of us were able to make it with 48 hours of notice, but the rest of them are here with you in spirit. And we will be at the march on the 30th, or the protest at the Galleria. We will be at that council meeting on July 10th. And so tonight we chose 3 songs. The first one is Dona Nobis Pacem, which translates from the Latin as grant us peace. The second song is We Shall Overcome, the sacred anthem of all civil rights movements, and we encourage you to sing with us. And the last song is written by our sister activist in Oakland. Her name is Melanie DeMoore, and the song is called Standing Stone. The last time we sang this song, somebody asked us, what is a standing stone? And I realized that was a really good question. So tonight I'm prepared to tell you that a standing stone is, think of Stonehenge, those huge, impenetrable stones that cannot be moved. Throughout the centuries, different religions, different cultures have put them in places, and we're not sure why, but we just know that they cannot be moved. And the point of this song, Standing Stone, is that we will be a standing stone for the community.
Dona nobis
Thank you, beloved chorus. So how about another round of applause for the chorus there? So before we move into our final moments together, I do want to thank all of our speakers this evening. So let's give them all a round of applause, please. I'd like to thank our presenters and our musicians as well. Thank you. Our sound, Matt, there and back. Our videographer, Ace Green. Ace leads a nonprofit in its own right, Youth Cameras Action, who is a nonprofit that works with youth at risk, giving them skill sets. Sorry, it's been a long week. Helping to develop skill sets for job opportunities, so as they move forward in life, that they have a greater opportunity for their own development and greater yet to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. As Vicki alluded to, she Facebook messengered me at 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and here we all are. And so I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for the sacred yes and the call of your heart to be here in this community, sharing together and learning together and educating ourselves and educating each other. And learning and growing and learning what it is that we can do, because as Reverend Dr. Michael Gott said of unity in Houston, as he said, faith without works isn't dead. Faith without works isn't faith. So this morning I was asked, well, you know, it's kind of political in here on a Sunday morning for church. It feels awfully political. Girl, please. It gotta be me, I can't be anybody else. So this is not political. This issue has been politicized, but it is not a political issue. This issue is a humanitarian crisis. So I am not going to listen and entertain the idea that it is a political issue. There is not a political issue when children are being ripped from their families. There is not a political issue when asylum seekers, refugees are not given due process. That's not a political issue. That's a human rights issue. And we are called as people of faith to stand in our faith, to stand in the power and the presence that each one is imbued with. Each one of us is the transformative presence and power of love. That is who we are. That is who we have come here to be. And if we simply stay back and are quiet and live in our comfort zones, nothing happens. No change happens, no growth happens, because really what is happening here is life is continually evolving. Life is continually moving forward. Now we can be passive about it, or we can step into the greater yet to be. And stepping into the greater yet to be calls for each one of us to be bold in doing that. Calls for each one of us to be brave in doing that. We don't get to sit by and watch and just engage on Facebook. Like, unhappy face, angry face, right? The discourse that's happening on Facebook, yeah, it can move things forward because the power of Facebook Messenger this week has brought this together, has connected us in larger and greater ways. I did not know Shawnee. I still have yet to meet Shawnee. I did not know Licia. I still have yet to meet her. I still have yet to meet Rabbi Singer and Reverend Aaron and Reverend Andrea from All Saints Episcopal. And yet all of these beloveds were working with me and working with Vicki and working with Hilda and working with Aaron. It was a collective effort brought forth by a call of spirit within the larger Riverside community that voiced itself through Vicki. As I say, she pushed me down the water slide, but I was at the top already, so, there you go. Because what this is a bold step out. It is a bold step out for Riverside Community Center for Spiritual Living. It's a bold step out for Centers for Spiritual Living worldwide to take the stand and the stance that you heard spoken by Jeannie earlier this evening. You see, the issues that we're looking at, the issues that we're facing, they were born out of ignorance. They're born out of ignorance of who we truly are, and who we truly are siblings with each other. Brothers and sisters and siblings. Siblings. Each one of us, when I see you, I see me. It is the divine in you that I recognize. It is the divine in me that says, hey, how you doing? Deep cries unto deep, and deep answers deep. And it is this truth, it is this interconnectedness, it's this oneness that our beloveds in Washington, our beloveds who continue to perpetrate the peacemakers sworn to serve, continue to unwittingly or wittingly perpetrate crimes against humanity because they do not know who they are. But we do. We do. Because even in their unskilled behavior, and believe me, there's a lot of unskilled behavior, even in their unskilled behavior, who they were born as, what they were born as, how they came into this life was just like the children that we now see ripped from their families. Each being here tonight, each being on the planet was born as the presence of love. Maybe not born of love. Maybe that is not how they were conceived, but each life is the life of love. Each life is the life of the divine made manifest here on earth. And it is that they have forgotten. Or perhaps they were never awoke to it. And so that is what we as people of faith can do. We as people of faith can call them higher. Because as Einstein said, a problem cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that created it. So therefore, we have to call ourselves higher as well. We can use our divine discontent. We can use that anger for creativity. To work to find a solution, to spark that inner fire, to say, hey, not on my watch. But if we are using that anger to tear apart other people, to condemn, to make wrong or call evil, then are we really any different? Breathe that in. It's a hard one, I know. I've been there. But truly, what I know is that each one is the power and the presence of love. And that is what drives me forward. That is what keeps me moving. That is what keeps me allowing to be able to do the work I do in the world. That is what allows me to speak from this platform, is because I have to know that. I have to know that truth. That when you walk through those doors, or when I see you on the street, that who do I see? I see love. I see the presence of God. I see the presence of the divine right there. And if I'm seeing that, then regardless of the unskilled behavior, I can stand in spiritual principle and I can speak truth to power rather than just being pissed off. It comes from a place of spiritual strength and a spiritual power. And so it is a spiritually motivated social engagement. And Ernest Holmes, the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, said, "What we resist persists." So what I call us to is I call us to persist rather than resist. Because he also said, show me one person who is for something and against nothing, who condemns no one, who loves so completely that they condemn no one, and I'll show you another Jesus. I'll show you another ascended master. And so that is what he calls us to. He calls us to love. And if we are going to be spiritual people, that is who we're called to be. If we are going to step out in faith, we have to do so knowing that one with God is a majority. Or the divine, or whatever name you use for the infinite love intelligence that is back of all of creation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, or with love, and the Word was love. And that which love did not create was never ever created. So therefore everything has to come back to that. So I call you, I urge you to rise up. Not only rise up in the streets, because that is absolutely important, but rise up in consciousness so that when we are stepping out into the streets, when we are stepping out into the rally on the 30th at the Galleria, or those of us going to the rally in Victorville that same day, later on in the day, that when we step up and we step out that way, we're standing in principle. We're standing from the power and the presence of love. Martin Luther King said, hatred does not drive out hatred, only love can do that. Light or darkness does not drive out darkness, only light can do that. So I invite you to persist. I invite you to persist in speaking truth to power. I invite you to persist in calling out injustices, cruelty, and inhumane practices. Persist in calling our leaders and each other into higher states of consciousness, into higher states of being, and into compassionate action. Persist in being the voice for the silenced and the marginalized. Persist in recognizing our inherent oneness. Persist in loving our neighbor as ourselves. Persist in holding the high ideal of this country, while opening our eyes and seeing the very real experiences that are happening in life right now. Persist in working together to find real and lasting solutions. Persist in rallying and unifying. Persist in taking action whenever and wherever possible. And you heard many opportunities and many potentialities here this evening from our speakers, each one calling you to do something. It can start locally, but where does it really start? It starts right here. It starts within. When we change within, our families change, our communities change, our world changes. But it starts here. It starts right here. So I invite you to persist in being the love, persist in being the light. Thank you for the sacred yes of already being here and beginning the work, continuing the work. May we continue it together, and may we continue it from a place of love and a place of light. And so it is. So I invite our practitioners to please stand and form a line across the front here, and I invite our visiting clergy to do the same as well. So Reverend Kathy, if you would please join us, and Dr. Victoria as well, please. So in this faith tradition, we have practitioners here who in other faith traditions might be called lay ministers or Stephen ministers. But these are our beloved practitioners who every day are practicing and praying for this community and for the world at large. And so if you're comfortable doing so, I invite you to close your eyes and turn within as we move into a moment of what we call affirmative prayer. And taking a deep collective breath and realizing that it is the breath of life that is breathing us. I'm not taking breath, I'm not giving breath, I'm simply allowing it to breathe me. And this breath of life is love, this breath of life is God, this breath of life is the one power, this breath of life is the divine. And so what I know is that there's only one power, one presence, one infinite eternal beingness, one love intelligence back of all of creation that brought forth of itself, through itself, as itself, everything and everyone. And so what I know is that there is a divine activity, there is a divine order that is happening here, though I do not necessarily understand it in this moment. What I do know is that there is a harmony and an order and a balance. What I know is that there is a peace that passes all understanding, and that this is back of all things, regardless of appearances in form. What I know is that there is one truth, and that truth is that there is only one, and we are all united in it and as it. So I recognize this life that lives itself through each one here. I recognize this life as it lives itself through all of the families and all of our immigrants, through all of the people of this nation and the world. It is the same life that lives through and as elected officials, governments, people with the power to make decisions for the collective. That truly there is only one, and because there is only one, this has to be true everywhere if it is true anywhere. And so I speak my word here and now, recognizing that the infinite power and presence of love is right where those children are, is right where those families are, it is right where each detainee is. It is right there in the hearts of the ICE patrol officers. It is right there in the hearts of those in Washington, D.C. It is right there in the hearts of the gang members and the governments of Central America. And it is right there in the hearts of each one present here. There is that presence and power of love. And I call it forth now. I call it forth to arise from the depths. I call it forth from the ignorance and the darkness, and I shine the light into the darkness, and I see. I see with the eyes behind the eyes. And I hear with the ears behind the ears. And I know rightly. I know justly. And I recognize that each is our neighbor, each is our sibling. And I call us forth into that high action now. Step forth bravely and boldly, because we embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love. That is what we have been called here to be. That is what we have been called here to do. So I simply give thanks for all that has been revealed here this evening. I give thanks for each beloved who has said a sacred yes. I give thanks for our speakers and our musicians and our presenters and everybody who has contributed to making this evening happen. And I give thanks for the consciousness, the seed of consciousness that has been planted here this evening. And I release this word into the law, that creative medium that knows how to bring forth all of creation. And I let it be so. And so it is. In the name of the one, amen. I invite you to please stand and prepare your candles. And as you hold the light, tip your candle to get the light, and then hold your light vertically, and we'll let the light pass through from the practitioners here. You light your candles, and then move down the center aisle to light the rows. Go ahead and as we do this, if the chorus and our choir and our soloists would begin with Imagine, and I invite you to join in. Blessings. Bendigas. I love you. Te amo. Peace. Paz. And so it is. Así es. Abolish ICE, and then what was the other one? Abolish something. Thank you. Oh, thank you for being here. Good night, beloveds.